Sairam, dear brothers and sisters, my sincere and most humble pranams to our very beloved Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. First of all, I want to thank the organizers, the officers of the center, the elders, and my brother, Sai brother Jean, for giving me the opportunity and allowing me to participate in this satsang. I also want to thank you from my heart for very beautiful bhajans. They were really beautiful. I was lost in it. Thank you. This center, the Hollywood Center, has a special place in my heart. This is the first center I came to, first Sathya Sai Center I came to. It was in another location in 1980. Very reluctantly, because I was filled with thoughts about science and physics and mathematics and nothing about, I really did not understand Swami. And my mother and sister would go to the Sathya Sai Center at the Hollywood Center. And I was single, so I would come and drop them off at the center and then head off to, there was a nearby temple where there was some free food. So I would go there and come back and pick them up until one day somebody from the Sai Center came out and said, "Why are you dropping your family? Why don't you come in as well?" And so that's how my journey started. I was dragging my heels, but I came in. And it was beautiful when I entered that, the old Hollywood Center. There was a gentleman with a tenor voice, it's just beautiful voice, and he was singing Ram Rahim Ko Bajne Wale. I'll never forget that. And so this scientist guy who didn't understand much of Sathya Sai Baba entered this place, and I started bawling my head off. And it was so embarrassing. I just walked out of the place, went to the washroom, cleaned myself up, and I thought, okay, let me go back in and try it again. And I went inside and started crying again. And then I left. This happened about 3 times, and then I said, this is not for me. And I went back to my car. So it's a journey that started with the Hollywood Center. And as we go from that time when Swami was alive in his body to today, what brought me to Swami then, I find, is exactly what keeps me with Swami today. And in thinking about that, I know, it's sometimes, I can talk a lot about my experiences with Swami when he was alive. But if you look at Shirdi Sai Baba, we have lost an entire generation that was alive with him. And what we hear of now are the stories and experiences of Shirdi Sai Baba, who is still among us. And Sathya Sai Baba is no different. The experiences we had with Swami when he was alive is Act 1. Now we are in Act 2. Swami in the physical form is no more. And so what do? We run helter-skelter thinking about where is God? What is God? And we talk to people, we try to find out what is happening. But that is why I wanted to emphasize that whatever brought me to this center and to Sathya Sai Baba is what keeps me with him today. And I'll explain what that is. But when we sing these bhajans, it was just so beautiful. And Swami, in one of his discourses, long ago in 1956, he talks about the reality of who we are. And he says that the divine inside us is Mahashakti. It's extremely powerful. That's why it's called divine. And let's just take mind and body, just two of them. The mind-body complex is the Maya Shakti. It creates the Maya. So there's a Mahashakti and Maya Shakti. And how do we get rid of this Maya Shakti so we can have a glimpse of the Mahashakti? And in that discourse, Swami talks about various ways. One of them is 3 simple paths. Japam, which is what we did just now, the bhajans and namasmarana and chanting of Swamis or God's names in various forms. Japam. Dhyanam is the second thing he says, which is meditation. And the third is yogam, which is the final communion with God. But this God is inside us. We can no more afford to look for God outside of us. For if we do, we will get misled. Let us look at the God within us who dwells in us. And for whatever your age is, for so many years, the perfect personification of patience and perseverance is that which is inside you, waiting and waiting and waiting for your mind and body to recognize it and have communion with it. That communion is what we seek. When we talk about patience, we often think about patience of us, of the body and the mind. That is nothing compared to the patience of the divine in us, which has been waiting to be recognized, to be identified, and to have communion with the body and the mind. And so in this process, how do we cultivate this relationship with the divine inside us? The experience of the divine is what we need, not the knowledge of the divine. We all know there is a divine. We always say that. But the way you purified yourself today, you made the burritos, went over to downtown, gave burritos to the homeless people in this cold weather that they're going through. You didn't think of yourself, you thought of someone else. And as you go through this process, and the final bhajans was the climax of this entire day, it was so beautiful because it allows you a glimpse of who you are. And we often say, I do this because I want to see Swami in others. No. How can I see Swami in you if I can't see Swami in myself? So the journey begins with looking at ourselves and the divine inside us and experiencing it. The knowledge is easy. I can read all the scriptures. I can go and talk to many people. But experience is what transforms us, not the knowledge. And so to build this experience, there are various ways. And I started thinking about this, and that's how I came to Swami. I started going towards spirituality at a young age, and I was in school in 9th grade, and I was in a Catholic school, and my Catholic, the priest, one of the fathers, taught me not just to say prayers, but to think about every word in the prayer that we say. And so he sat down with me and he taught me a prayer. You know, eternal God, creator of all, I firmly believe that I am now in thy presence, and I won't forget that prayer. But he said, wait a minute, pick each word and think about the glory of that word. The inspiration that made someone say that word, eternal. Wow. Now we are talking about the universe, the origin of the universe. Time is not a factor. Eternal. That is God. And you just on that one word, you can close your eyes and lose yourself in that one word, eternal. Eternal God, creator of all. Creator of all that I see, everything, the universe, the ant, the living and the non-living, everything. Not just things, but events. Poverty, richness, the wealthy, the evil, the good, creator of all. And now chew on that for some time. So the prayer becomes a process of meditation. And that's how I started. And from that I went on to many people who are sages and saints, and spent time with them to try and understand what exactly is spirituality. Swami says the sciences is for the senses. And that's one part of us. The mind-body complex is one part of us. But there is this other part inside us which is not amenable to senses. And therefore it is wrong to put a yardstick of the sciences to understand that. But it is experience that tells us who this divine is. And when you get that experience, you don't want to leave it. A good friend of mine was telling me about meditation. And Swami says we should wake up at 4 a.m. and the day is divided into the three gunas, the Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. And the Sattvic part is 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., similarly 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that's when we should be contemplating on who we are and trying to look inside and at our divine selves. And so I usually meditate for long hours. And so somebody, a good brother of mine, Sai brother of mine, asked me, why do you do that? All I need is 11 or 12 seconds and Swami's there. That's what Swami said in that discourse. And so when he's there, I'm done. I have seen God. And there is nothing else to do for the remainder of the 4 hours. And I did not say anything, but my feeling is, and I thought about it, but my feeling is, when you go to Parthi and when Swami was alive, and you have his darshan, do you walk out and say, I've seen him? Out you go to eat your upmas? No. We are enamored, we are drunk in the beauty and glory of the divine. It's an intoxication that you can't leave behind. In fact, you want more and more and more and more of it. And that's what happens. When you have that communion with God inside you, you just don't want to leave it. I often have to have an alarm clock to get me out of there into my day. So when you, and Swami has a beautiful, this is a discourse that's, I don't know if it's published, but one of Swami's students told me about this because Swami gives these little mini discourses to his students. And he talks about 3 things on our path to communion with the God inside us. The first he calls dharana, and the second is dhyana, and the third is samadhi. And these are 3 steps that comes actually in the last 3 steps of Patanjali's Yoga Shastras. There's a part of Yoga Shastra called Ashtanga Yoga, and this is 6, 7, and 8 of Ashtanga Yoga. Dharana is concentration on one thing for 12 seconds. That's it. 12 seconds. Give yourself 12 seconds. Now don't concentrate on a Swami outside. He's not there. He's here. So try and dig this Swami up from inside you. For 12 seconds, focus on that Swami and nothing else. So that is dharana. And that's it. You're done. Then the next step is dhyana. That is 12 times you do the dharana. So 12 seconds of focusing on this divine inside you. Again 12 seconds. Again 12 seconds. You do this 12 times. So 12 times 12, 144. That is 2 minutes and 44 seconds of concentration. That is called dhyana. Samadhi is 12 times you do this dhyana. So 12 times 12 times 12. 144 times 12. And that's about 28 minutes and 48 seconds. Less than half an hour of concentration in a day. That's not too bad at all. But when you start practicing, this is what I'm not saying, I'm just quoting what Swami said to his students. So 12 times, that gives you dharana. 12 times 12, 144, that's 2 minutes and 44 seconds dhyanam. And then you go to 28 minutes and 48 seconds. That is another 12 times of dhyanam, that gives you samadhi. Samadhi is not unconscious, losing your consciousness. Samadhi is this communion with God. And this communion with God is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. And eventually you want to be in a state of communion at all times. And that is the beauty of, we all know about the story of Brother Lawrence, a Carmelite monk. And one of the things he talks about is how he's a cook in a kitchen, and amidst the clatter of dishes and people shouting at each other, he feels as tempered and as focused as if he were kneeling beside the sacrament, the holy sacrament. That is where his mind is. His brain can do all these other things, but his mind is somewhere else. It's focusing on the divine. Well, for him it's outside. For us it can be inside. And there are different faiths that follow different versions of divinity, but they all have something in common. What they have in common is that there is a divine power that we should be spending probably all of our lives thinking about and focused on that communion. It is not a communion you come into a church and you have and you get out and you forget about it. It's lost. The beauty is lost. You don't want to lose that beauty. You have a Swami in your pocket. He is here, right here, and we can get that glory, get that beauty to come to us. And that's very, very important. Because if you don't, and you lose that Swami inside you, now that there is no physical Swami, it is very easy to be lost. And there will be difficulties in this path. It's not an easy path. That's because that's the nature of the divine inside us. That's why we are created. Swami says, I created myself from myself so I can love myself. And what does that mean? It means that the essence of this creation is the property of love. You had a beautiful bhajan today. And if you think about the bhajan in a slightly different way, you sang, I am God, remind me my Lord. Think of it not as a Lord outside you. It's not outside you. It's the Lord inside you. And it's a dialogue. So you're looking inside and saying, remind me, my Lord, who I am. And then that light is telling you, I am love. I am bliss. Right? So you're having this conversation with somebody inside you, which makes the whole of you. So whenever you say that I, your mind should remember that I is the light inside you, because everything else is a foreigner. Together you are there. Swami calls us a container for that. Always he says, Atma Swarupalaya, Prema Swarupalaya. We are all embodiments of love. Embodiments, that means we are containers. So this is not the I is the one inside. So have that dialogue with that. And you'll find that your relationship with that inside you is very strong. And then it becomes very difficult for someone. When you're strongly married to what is inside you, that marriage is hard to break. Somebody outside can't steal it away from you. And I mean, if you think about, say, you're drilling for oil, and you start drilling and you go 100 feet and you don't find oil, and you go another 100 feet and don't find oil, and you know from all the readings you've done, all the satellite imagery and the ultrasounds and this, whatever you've done, you know exactly where the oil should be, but you start digging, no oil. Again, you did another 100 feet, no oil. And you keep going, and you see at some point you hit shale and you just, you can't go any further. And somebody comes along and he says, you know what, come with me. I think we should try digging somewhere else. I have access to oil somewhere else. You can keep going like this. Start digging somewhere else and try and see if there is oil. If not, go somewhere else. The truth is, there is oil here. Every bit of evidence, every bit of knowledge that you've collected, all the data you've collected tells you there is oil here. By the way, I'm not for drilling oil, but we can substitute some other product for oil. But when you drill and you find difficulties, or if you find hard stone, find a way around it, find a way through it. But that oil is still there. It can't go anywhere else. The divine is inside us. And in the face of difficulties, in the face of losses, we can't abandon ship. You can't abandon your marriage because you decided that it was too difficult. What do we all do? We go and try, see counselors. We want to preserve something that is very holy. Well, holier than anything that we can think of is this bond with the divine inside us. We can't leave it. If we get weak, then that's when somebody can come and say, come to me. That's when you have an affair with someone else. That is what we do when we go to another guru. Our guru is here. Our Sai Baba is here. That is all we need. We can talk to others to try and reinforce this concept, but never deviate from this concept. This marriage can't be broken. Not in this body, not in this embodiment. So, the essence of Swami's teachings is basically this, that he is the indweller of us. And people have been saying this, the sages have been saying this for a long time. There are various versions of this, but Advaita Vedanta is one of them, that God is inside us and that is the only truth. And the second step after that is to see, well, now I know this God inside me, I see that light. The weaker the mind gets, the stronger the light gets, the more powerful you become, the more effulgent your light is when the mind is subdued. And that is the beauty of this light. And when that happens, then you say, well, now I see light in others. Because you have faith in your relationship with your divine self. When you lose that faith in that relationship, to give you the analogy, when you lose faith in your marriage to the divine, then how can you look at someone else as divine? How can you respect another marriage when your marriage is in shambles? It's the same analogy. So with the divine inside us is so powerful that once we recognize that, the thread of the divine is very easy to see that it's connected. It's all connected. We don't have to imagine a connection. We just see it. What you have to focus on is that what is inside and let that reality shine. So this is the essence of what Swami talked to his students about, the 3 steps and how to meditate. You can start doing this even today, when you go home, at least do the 2 minutes and 44 seconds. That's a small thing. That's 12 times, focusing for 12 seconds, and then 12 times you do that. So 12 times 12 is 144. So that's the easiest step. If you start with that, then you can slowly go on to more things. But the power of what you are cannot be underestimated. And we've heard this many times from Swami, from so many people. And these sages and seers who come tell us repeatedly that we are not spiritual beggars. You never have to go to someone else to seek what you can find within yourself. When you have a treasure inside you, when I have all the money I can ever dream of, I would not go to someone else to borrow money. I have it. And that, I don't have that, by the way, but that is basically what you would be doing. When you have the divine inside you, to cultivate that relationship gives you whatever divinity possesses. And what divinity possesses is so powerful, you never need to go somewhere else and say, I need this, please teach me this, please do this for me, please bless me, please, and so on. Yes, it is okay out of respect to say it, but never forget the truth, and that's the nature of communion. When you're in touch with your divine self, you don't forget that truth of who you are, which is the divine self. And at some point, you tell yourself, and let me put it another way, which is a little bit more brutal, and the reason I'm saying this is only because of an experience, but the experience is not as important as the truth. Imagine a dialogue between the divine inside you, the light, the Swami inside us. Imagine a dialogue between that and your mind, the mind-body complex. You know, the mind, you can put everything superconscious, everything subconscious, consciousness, cognition, mind-body complex, and the divine soul. Remove the soul. What you have is, unfortunately, a decomposing flesh. Won't last long. Okay, soon it's going to start smelling. I'm sorry to say, that's all it is. It's a sack that has no existence. So, this light says, and enters this. The moment it enters the sack, the light tells this body, I have given you life. And it's not out of ego it's saying that, that's the truth. I have given you now the ability to think. And lo and behold, what are you thinking? You are denying me. You start your life denying me, you end your life denying me. But I am the one who gave you the power to think. I am the one who gave you the power to debate. I'm the one who gave you the power to speak, to see, to hear, all the senses. You're using everything I've given you to deny me. Just doesn't make sense. Because the moment this leaves, that is nothing. The moment that leaves, this remains the same. The soul remains unperturbed, undiminished, effulgence that cannot be beaten by anything. But this dies, decomposes, is gone the moment the soul leaves. So it is a sad fact that we have to remind ourselves often of our deaths. And there is no better gift that God can give us than the concept of death. Because that reminds us that it is time for us to start spending our lives looking at who we are. So death helps us live a better life. A life of service is important, but the purpose of that is finally to realize, we always say, the Sathya Sai International Organization is not a service organization. The Sathya Sai International Organization is a spiritual organization. It's an organization that helps you understand your true nature, your divine nature. It helps you see your soul. It helps you in that process of communion with your soul. That's what the SSIO is all about. To do that, it provides you the various vehicles for that. Today's bhajans were so beautiful, I was lost. I was lost in the communion. There is an opportunity for that. And I can never forget that opportunity you gave me. The same thing with the service that you do, the seva that you do. At that time, think about the light inside you. Be one with that light. And the beauty of what you do will feed those flames of oneness. Don't focus on the one you serve, it's the focus on the one who is serving, which is God. Of course, that is also God. But that's the tougher job, to see God in that person. You'll be struggling. I want to see God, I want to see God. I try that. I want to see God in my patients. If you can't see that God inside you, that other God is hard to see. So start with the easier job first. Because sooner or later, at one point, the soul will leave your body. And then you're half done. The job is not done. And you don't want to be in that state. So this is morbid. Okay, so now I'll say something nice and fun about spirituality. Swami, we always say, so this is now the fun part. The other part is extremely, extremely beautiful. It's beautiful, but as they say, when you're a child, whatever your mom or dad says you should eat and it is good for you, it's always yucky. I saw a little kid, but I hope he's ignoring. So it is beautiful. The beauty of the divine inside us is unimaginable. And so it's only something we can experience. But on the outside, when Swami's there in his body and his, and you're conversing with him, I can tell you some of the experiences that highlight this relationship with the divine inside us. Experiences of others. Dr. Narendranath Reddy was telling once about how when he had to give a talk in front of Swami, he went to Swami and said, "Swami, I'd like you to speak through me." And Swami said, "This Swami will not speak through you. That Swami will speak through you." But he pointed to Dr. Reddy, so the one inside you. Always our focus has to be on the inside Swami. The outside Swami is beautiful, but so is the one inside. And there are times when Swami tells us things only so that we can focus more on the inside Swami. Sometimes he takes us through little steps, and each person's the step that will give you a little bump, a little bounce up to the next step, he knows best about that. But so do you. When he's gone, it's not an outsider. It is you who will know what is best for you. It is through your own experiences. And Swami has said that in another discourse in 1980, that we have to keep our eyes and ears open. It's like a radio that we tune into. And so we have to see what is going on. Now, in that process, there'll be a lot of false alarms. Everything is a sign. You'd say, "Oh, I remember somebody telling me, you see a traffic cone and you say orange color, that's Swami." So our mind is going to go crazy a bit. But at some point, you'll realize that the probability of something happening is so low that you just can't ignore it. And more importantly, there'll be a whoomp, there'll be a hit on you. There's something it'll blast you and it'll say, "This is different." That is your experience of the God. That's what you're born for. And you want to crave more and more and more and more of that. Be a junkie for that feeling, because that spiritual junkie is who you should be. And when you get that feeling of divine inside you, the first experience, and Swami has said this again, the first experience of your divinity is often that of what? Creator. God is a creator. God is love. Love is God. God is also creator. He creates various things. We don't want to get into, let me create money for me, let me create some chain and gold and so on. That's not our purpose. But experience the divine inside us. And we can do that. We can do that by subduing the power of the mind. A lot of the power of the mind is negative. The Dalai Lama says, whenever you get a thought or whenever you get a feeling which is negative, it is not you. And this is important because, the Mahayana Buddhism's various things doesn't think of a divine inside us. But still, he believes that it is not you. It is your mind, it is your body, it is your thought. It is not you. So negative feelings and negative thoughts is not you. And in this quest for finding the true you inside, when you remove all of the negativity, all that remains is the beauty of the God inside you. And it's that simple. Just keep reminding yourself. Either you remind yourself of what you're not, or you remind yourself of what you are. Those are the only two ways. But it is you. You have to do the hard work. That's the only way to get ahead, and from grade 1 to grade 2 to grade 9 to grade 10 or whatever you do in life, you have to do the hard work. It's very rare that you get endowed with a lot of stuff that you sit on and you splurge and you lose and you're still ahead of the game. That's very rare. Most of the time, you have to do the hard work, and then the beauty arises from inside you. Swami says that in different ways. Sometimes he says bangaru to you. When he says that, gold, it means, now he has to thrash you, burn you, he's got to do all this to be able to show to you who you really are. And that's the beauty of life for which you've taken birth. You have taken birth for it. There is a soul inside you that entered your body for that purpose, right? So that is about all I want to say. And the reason, when I was coming here, I wanted to actually talk about something completely different, about surrendering. But when I heard these bhajans, I was moved to say just this about the God inside us. Now, surrendering is just a corollary of this. You're surrendering to the God inside you. And I'll just say one sentence and then I'll stop. And if there's any questions, then I can talk based on that question. But there's a story of Swami. It's not a story. It's real, and this happened to one of Swami's students. And so the student, Swami asked him to give a talk, and Swami says, "So what are you going to talk on?" And so the kid says, "I'm going to talk on the concept of guru." Swami said, "So what's a guru?" And so then he says, the one who's gunatita, gu is so that so without any form, qualities without any form, the one who is all-encompassing. And Swami says, "I have a form. So I'm not your guru. I'm not all-encompassing. I'm right here. So I'm not your guru." And so then this kid says, "Okay, I'll talk on surrender," he says. Okay. Swami says, "Okay, what is surrender?" And he says, "Swami, it means everything I have, I place it in your divine lotus feet." "What do you have?" Swami asked him. "I gave you whatever is there and you're giving it back to me and you call that surrender." So the guy said, "What do I do?" So then Swami said, and he said this in Tamil, because the student was a Tamil speaking student, that surrender means it's a concept of the mind, right? Our reality is the soul. So surrender is a concept of the mind. And he says, no matter what happens in your life, good or bad, you must have the unshakable faith that God has orchestrated this for your own good. This is very easy to say, but very difficult to practice. How many of us in times of difficulties have said, "Oh God, why are you doing this to me? I have been such a good devotee. I have done so many good things." And you take out your notebook and your balance sheet and you say this. You haven't even gone to the pearly gates and you have a balance sheet already. So you say, "This is what I've done. These are all the good things, and why do you do this to me, Swami? Oh, woe is me, daya karo." And we have bhajans on that too. The truth is, no matter what you're going through in your lives, you have got to first have the faith that it is orchestrated by God for your own good. You have to have that faith.
In light of that,
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
went through some terrible time with your son. And we would love to hear about that and how you got through that particularly difficult time. And then I'd also like to tell them about the time you spent on the streets of Calcutta, spending the night there, or several days there, however long.
So Jean asked me to talk about two experiences. I'll go to the second one first. As I said, my quest for spiritual understanding and knowledge has been going on since grade 9. And I've gone to various gurus and schools. The Ramakrishna, there's a madam or a school in Chennai, the Theosophical Society, Shankaracharya, And at one point I wanted to, and the reason I did all this is because there's really two parts of us, and we have to have this model. This model must be fixed in our mind. There really are two parts. There is the soul and there is the mind-body complex. I am split, I'm schizophrenic. But that is the reality. The mind-body complex lives in the world of senses and sciences, as Swami says. But the other part lives in a world of experiences. And so to translate one to the other, you need to experience things. And I was a sponge for spiritual knowledge. So I read books from various scriptures and various religious faiths, and I would go to, a good Christian or a good Muslim or a good Hindu who can guide me, at least tell me what is going on from their point of view, and I would listen. My goal was to listen, not to judge, to listen, and then see how does that jive with what I know, and that's the only way to grow. So I kept visiting a lot of these places, and it was a pilgrimage. In fact, even recently I went on a little pilgrimage for a couple of months. But at that time, I asked Swami if I can go and spend some time with Mother Teresa, and he said, go. This was during one of my visits to India. And so I went to Calcutta, and I came from that time I was living in Canada, so I came from Canada, stayed in a fancy hotel in Calcutta, in a 5-star hotel, and Mother was very kind. She'd say, come in the morning and we'll have breakfast together. So every morning I would go to her place and we would have breakfast together and we would talk, and I would ask questions and she would ask me questions. She asked me about Sai Baba many times. And then I would go and work in the home for the dying and destitute. So these are people who are extremely, they're going to be dying. They are dying. And nobody in India wants to do anything with them. They're homeless people who are dying, but others don't want to touch them because in India there's this fear that it becomes a police case. So you take into your fold somebody who's dying and he dies in your house, it's a police case. And then there'll be all these questions about murder versus death and so on and so forth. Why didn't you take him to the hospital? The hospital doesn't want to take this person. They can't pay for it. Anyway, it's a whole history. So what she does is pick these homeless people from wherever they are, if they're dying, and bring them to her house. She'll bathe them. She will, clean them up, clothe them, and give them some peace and happiness. And many of them die very soon. And when they die, she doesn't know who they are. If she knows what religion they are, she'll read out of that. If they're Christian, she'll read out the Bible, the Quran. If they're Muslim, if she doesn't know, then she would read from the Bible. So, but either way, so it's the name of God, that you die hearing the name of God. So I would go to the home for the dying and have a nice breakfast, and then I would go in a taxi. So I was going in that taxi one day. I stopped the taxi, looked at some things I can buy, some little knickknacks and souvenirs, and got back into the taxi. And then I'm going, and Mother is walking in the hot Calcutta sun. So I pulled over and I said, Mother, would you like to come in and I'll give you a ride? And she looked at me and she said, Venkat, get out of the taxi and come with me. So I sent the taxi off and I walked with her. And she said, where are you staying? So I was embarrassed and I said the name of the hotel. And so then she said, do you know what you're planning to do today? So I said, yeah, I will go there. And I had these things I had to conquer, like some fears or some so I said, so I'm going there and I'll help the dying and destitute people, and I'll give them baths, I'll do all this, but I want to experience being yelled at. I want to experience being whatever, right? Because they're suffering a lot, these patients, and they know they're dying, and it's terrible. They have maggots all over their body, and you've got to pull the maggots out and then bathe them with this antiseptic, and and then they have they've taken off, the maggots have taken off the top layer of the epidermis, and then it's raw skin. It's very painful. But you're doing all, you can't say, you can't touch it, you got to do this, get deep into it, knee deep into this. So that's what I was doing. So I told her that. So she said, come. So I did all that. Then she said, why don't you join me for supper? So I came back, again walked back, and as I was having supper, and then after supper we went to the chapel, which is just above her house. And we were walking, and I said, Mother, I'm so touched by how inspired you are to do this, and your compassion touches my heart. She was visibly upset. She looked at me and said, Venkat, it's not compassion. And as we were walking up the stairs, the landing part of the stairs, as it winds over, there's a statue of Jesus. And she said, do you see Jesus? Do you see that man? That is Jesus. Do you see this person? That is Jesus. That's all I see. It is not compassion. How can you ignore God? And she went on and on. It's a completely different way of looking at things. And then she asked me, she said, well, I will ask you if you can you experience what a dying person is going through, or what a destitute is going through? And I said, okay. So she said, I give you 1 week and come back and tell me what you experienced. So for 1 week, I went and lived under a bridge as a homeless guy in Calcutta. And yes, it was difficult. Of course, I can run to my hotel and change my whatever, but that was not my home. My home was here. I didn't bring anything from the hotel. I just lived there. So slowly grew a beard, and whatever I could eat is what somebody would give me, or what I could get out of garbage. And it was very difficult. I was hungry, I was thirsty, but what is more important was I lost my dignity. And it doesn't matter at some stage if somebody comes to you and says, here, take some food. That person will say, I've done a good deed, or whatever makes him or her happy. But it is very difficult. It's easy to give someone food or money or clothing, but it's difficult to give them dignity. It's difficult to give them love. It's difficult to give them the feeling that you and they are equally important in this world, and that there is no difference. You yearn for that. You yearn for that love. You yearn for that dignity. And the poverty of that is much more than the monetary poverty or the poverty of hunger. Hunger, I can bear with it. Without money, I can manage to live, at least for 1 week. But without love, without having the feeling of being loved, and the ability to love, you even go to someone, everyone wants to run away from you. They don't want you to touch them. If a little kid fell on the road and go to pick up the kid, they all start shrieking like you're some evil guy on the street. So you can't give love, you can't get love. That is a state worse than hunger. And that's what I told her at the end of the week. And I think life teaches you, but you have to want to learn. And I could have very easily just gone and fed some people and given money to someone to do the feeding and do an Narayan Seva and give money for someone to do Narayan. But it's not about that. It is about you looking inside, and that's what I was saying today, that you looking inside and recognizing that divinity is the most important part of your life and the purpose of your birth. The other 5 minutes? Okay. So you know what? I will leave time for questions, because the other thing is, maybe another time I'll come back. But questions?
The smell also. What about the smell?
Awful, yeah.
Sometimes people stay away
Yes.
because of the smell.
Yeah. And you think, hey, I'm the same guy. You're looking from inside you, right? I'm the same guy. Okay, I've got a beard if I touch myself, but I'm smelly, but I'm the same guy. But I can't do that. I really wanted to experience the life of a homeless person, the life of somebody who's a destitute. And I could suddenly burst out and start quoting Shakespeare, and people out there are going to say, well, what's going on? But the purpose was, you're right, yeah. Yes, please.
I had an experience in Pediatric a year ago
Mm-hmm.
in which when I touched Swami's Mahasamadhi and I had this inner dialogue, and when I raised my head, I had the experience of a waterfall of peace, which was phenomenal. And in 20 years of knowing Swami, I've never had this experience. And what I was left with was it was just grace. And so my question is, as we seek inside to know the self, that we are divine, this experience told me at that moment, it was only His grace that gave me the thimble of that experience, which was so profound. I was like, please, Swami, teach me how to tap into this. My question is you can't be inside me and know that experience I had. But is it selfish to want to have that experience of divine peace that is so phenomenal that you never want it to leave? And if we know the self, do you think that is part of the whole shebang?
Yeah, I would say, so the question is, when you once have an experience, a glimpse of the divine inside you, is it selfish or unfair to ask for more and to yearn for more? I would say no, that is the purpose of your birth, your life. And don't sell yourself short. Ask for more, pray for more. You're praying to yourself, always keep the focus inside. Pray to yourself, the experience you had was an experience of the divine inside you. And Swami is showing that little Swami inside, he's showing, I'm here, hey, I'm here. Let him speak, let him become big, let him who has been patient for 20 years, I'm putting your age as 20, let him who has been inside us since our birth speak. Let him come and be the one that is more powerful than our mind who has suppressed him for all these years. Enjoy that. That's what I would do.
One more.
Yes.
So I'd like to know at what age of yours went to Calcutta? Is it after education or before education?
Is it, what was the last two questions? Is it after?
No, after the qualification.
Before or after your education?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it was after the, my education has been a lot up and down as well. Not up and down, sideways. Partly because Swami asked me to change my field. Physically, he asked me to do that. But it was after I had finished two of my education. I had finished my PhD, I was already a professor. And then I had finished my MD and I was a doctor at that point. When I was finishing my MD at that time, I asked Swami. I would go to see Swami twice a year while I was in med school. And that is when I asked him about going to see Mother Teresa. So I was still a student, I guess.
Rohini's done one quick one.
Yeah, I wanted to know if your spiritual beliefs are ever in conflict with your scientific knowledge, because you're a man of science too.
I think there are two different domains. The spiritual part is experiential, and the scientific part is, as Swami says, based on the senses. I'm trying to find a bridge. I'm trying to see if there are things that science itself doesn't understand, and I can see there are a few. My knowledge of science is not that phenomenal or that complete. But when I see, I don't want to be the guy who says, quantum physics is the answer to spirituality and link one with the other. I really think they're two separate things. If we try to make sense of the spiritual world using our knowledge of the senses, I think we can get misled, we can get disappointed, and then we can negate and say, therefore this doesn't exist. See, our mind is always trying to find a reason why this doesn't exist. The soul cannot exist because the mind's world is a world of senses. And it may well be that there is something that the mind cannot describe using its knowledge derived from the senses. And that is possible. There have been, in fact, there are philosophers. Bertrand Russell was one of the philosophers who, Principia Mathematica, he has stated exactly that in any universe of reasoning and logic where you can create a system that is self-consistent, because that we call it an algebra based on axioms, but whatever it is, there will always be something in that. You can, using that system, you can prove anything you give it, you can prove it is right or wrong. But within that framework, there will always be one thing that you can prove neither right nor wrong, neither correct nor incorrect. So there's something that you can't prove. So there's always something that eludes our reasoning and logic. We can increase the domain of what our reasoning is and increase the number of, we call that axioms, but that doesn't mean that you will eliminate the possibility that there is still something within this enlarged domain that you can't explain. So I have, not that I've given up, but I really think that what our senses tell us in terms of science, scientific knowledge, and spirituality are two different things. And I would not try and, I don't want to fool myself into thinking, quantum physics will explain this, or string theory, this is a separate universe, that's a separate universe. Maybe there is some connection, and I'm trying to look at bridges, and I think I see some bridges, but I don't even want to venture into whether those bridges are real or not, because I don't understand it. How can I say anything about something I don't understand? Does that answer?
And Swami said science and where spirituality begins.
Right, where science ends, spirituality begins.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, please.
I know I heard that you are a doctor, a medical person. I don't believe in anybody being a better doctor than God. So how am I supposed to deal with this conviction that I have that my doctor is God, and therefore whatever happens to me, unless it's something that God guides me there, I can't deal with doctors. I don't trust them.
No, fair enough. So, yeah, I'll just for the recording. My dear sister she brought out an important point. So, the main thing is, do you trust doctors? And I'll tell you what Swami has. We do a lot of medical camps and medical work, and we have a medical camp that we run in Prashanti Nilayam. You might have all seen it. It used to be run out of N4, now it's N3. But every time at the end of the medical camp, we would go and Swami would talk to us, and we would show him what we've done. But one of the interviews, we asked Swami, we ran out of medication of a certain kind. Swami, what do we do for the patients? And then he said, at the time we give vibhuti to the patient, at that time, the problem is not ours anymore. It is his. It's between him and the patient. And while I cannot spiritualize science, I can say one thing. I have seen death quite a bit. Most of my patients come to me who are extremely sick. Sometimes perhaps death is the best thing that can happen to them. They're very sick patients. And you always, and you wonder about every principle of we chalk it off to karma, we chalk it up. Why does a 1-year-old child have this incurable brain tumor in him? Or why does this 5-month-old child have to go through physical abuse in his life and come to me with a damaged brain? And what on earth, where is justice? What are we doing? Am I curing anything? Am I treating anybody for anything? And the answers to all this is that, remember, anything that God has given us, like the homeless that you go to serve, the purpose of all that is for us to understand our divinity. When I see a patient, I want that patient to be my guru at that point. Mindfulness for me at that encounter is to bow to that guru and say, now show me who I am. That's the way I look at a patient. Because in each patient, there is a divine. What the patient is going through is something that is between him or her and the divine. But my job is to get the most mileage to understand myself from this encounter. Now, I do realize I am helpless in some instances. A little child who's 1 year old and has this horrendous cancer which can't be cured. What am I doing? Am I giving hope to this family, or is that hope even false hope? So my role that I think is what it is completely wrong. To me, to imagine that I am God is totally wrong. There are many, one of my colleagues, a neurosurgeon who's also a Sai devotee from Louisiana, he calls it toxic doubtlessness. That is, your belief that you are right and you know medicine and you're going to cure this person with whatever knowledge you have is, I'm sorry to say, it's toxic. That is wrong. Because there are so many things beyond us, and it takes that God inside you a mere millisecond to show you how helpless you can be. And it has happened to every surgeon, every physician. There's no such thing in my field as a simple surgery. It simply isn't. It's just it's okay, it's a simple surgery. No. In even the simplest of surgeries, I've seen things go wrong. So difficulties come. And when these difficulties come, you realize how impotent you are, truly. You are not God in that sense. Which is not God? The mind-body complex is not the God. The God is what is inside you. The witness to this is God. The witness to this is the real you, not the mind-body. I don't even know how the mind-body works, but I do the surgery. Whatever problems I encounter during the surgery, it's taken care of by the God inside. So divinity and the concept of being spiritual is an essential part for me as a surgeon. Now, what do you do? For you as a patient, it's a question of faith. Faith is a very important part of how you heal. How can we heal ourselves if we don't have faith in who we are? And that faith, as Swami said, and the Tamil word he used was Drida Nambikai, which is unshakable faith. I told you that question about surrender. Unshakable faith. Do you have that much faith that this disease is to be treated by your divine? Or at some point you'll say, what if that doesn't happen? I'll go to the doctor. That is weakness in your faith. For those, Swami has said that in discourse, for those who have faith, we don't need doctors, we don't need hospitals. But our faith is weak. Build that faith. Build
That's
it.
exactly my question. If you believe that God is the God within is your doctor, why do you need to go to a doctor that has studied and guess a lot?
Well, the question is, how strong is your belief that your God within you is your doctor? How strong is that belief? And he will test you. Yeah, but be careful what you ask. Yeah. He will test you. If you really want, God, teach me how powerful you are. I'll teach you. So yeah, that's the. But you're right. It's very difficult, this journey. But the difficulties, that's where surrender comes. The difficulties fade away when you have that faith. Faith is an essential. Just like 5 human values, there are spiritual values: patience, faith, surrender. These are spiritual values that are, to me, as important as the mind-body complexes as human values. Human values for me are in the mind-body complex. The spiritual values are in the soul and the spirit. And those are important qualities of patience, of faith, of surrender. And faith is that, for me, that comes first because Swami said that. I went, here's an experience, I'll end with this. So I feel bad that I didn't give any experience. But, I went with my son and my daughter, and we went to see Swami once. And in the interview, he asked my son, how old are you? And he said 7. So then Swami looked at us and he said, how do you know? He asked my son. And so, I'm used to this because in school, if I don't know the answer, I look down. That's the trick, right? You don't look at the teacher, you look down. So I look down, and then Swami goes, asks my son, he says, I don't know. He'll ask my daughter, I don't know. Then he looks at me and I say, I don't know. And then he said, because his mother told him. Faith, he said, because his mother told him, faith comes first. That's what he told me. Mother means some hospital, some record tells you were born on such and such date at such and such time. You say, yes, okay. You were present when you were born, but you were not cognitively ready to acknowledge that birth or to remember that birth. So we believe we have faith in someone else. That faith is important. So when Swami came as an avatar and he said that this God inside you is the most powerful, you are an Atma Swarupalaya, you are a container, you're an embodiment of this divine entity. We have to believe that. We have to find a way to harvest it. He has told us there is oil. Dig. You find a barrier, doesn't matter, dig, keep going, don't give up, don't give up. It's another thing that Dalai Lama said, don't give up. No matter what you see around you, don't give up. What you see around you is not true. What is true is what is inside you. Don't give up. Keep going, keep digging, and you will find your treasure. Sai Ram.